So you're trying to win $1 million on Monday night. And to do so, you'll need to know who to play. Well, these are the players you must have, and you don't want to mess this up. And we're starting with $8,400 Cortland Sutton, who his price point, not even being a top 5 price player on the slate, is mind-boggling to me. Because Sutton has the cheat codes. And if you don't know, the cheat codes is a stat we created, deep targets and red zone targets. It leads to fantasy upside. It unlocks them like a cheat code. He is number 2 in cheat codes with 19 deep targets and red zone targets combined. Only Devontae Adams has more than him, meaning that Sutton has more than the Stephon Diggs and the Cooper Kupps of the world. And now he gets to play the Chargers, who rank 24th in secondary and coverage, and they allow the 6th most catches to the wide receiver position, which helps Sutton, who ranks top 10 in receptions this year. Play Sutton, especially at such a cheap price point. And also target the wide receiver 1 for the Chargers, and that's Mike Williams, who's a little bit more expensive, but it's appropriate at $10,600 for what he is doing. And not to mention, the 6'4", 220-pound monster is going to have a matchup advantage Monday night. Because yes, the Denver secondary is good, but they just lost Ronald Darby, one of the best cornerbacks in the AFC and potentially the entire NFL, and now it's going to be replaced with Mathis, who is an undersized cornerback and is going to be primarily on Mike Williams for parts of this game. He weighs about 30 pounds less than Mike Williams. And yes, Patrick Surtain will be on Mike Williams, but he doesn't shadow players, so he'll be on Williams for only like a third of the game. And on the season, Williams has been fantastic. 8.8 targets per game, and the dude never leaves the field, running 38 routes per game. It's top 10 in the NFL, meaning that there's always upside for that one big play or the volume of 9 targets. And over the last 2 games, he has 24 total targets and over 250 receiving yards. It doesn't matter if Keenan Allen is out there or not. If he's not, it's even better, but if he is, it's not going to impact the upside of Williams, because Williams' role is absolutely elite. Look at this number right here. Under receiving yards, the column in these parentheses is air yards. In 4 straight games, he has over 100 air yards. If you have 100 air yards in a game, it means you're being targeted downfield and it leads to upside. He's well over 100 in these 4 straight games. So you want to play Mike Williams and target his upside. Wide receivers on showdown slates have so much upside, the most of any position, which is why I also like this next guy. And I tread lightly saying that I like him a ton, but it's $7,000 Jerry Judy. I actually think that he's probably a sit in a lot of fantasy leagues this week, but for a showdown slate at just $7,000, he's going to be out there, he's going to be running routes, and he's going to see high value targets. Now, his individual matchup is the reason I don't like him in your season-long leagues as much, and that's because he's facing Bryce Callahan in the slot, who's been a very solid cornerback this year, allowing just a 58% catch rate against him. And Judy hasn't been efficient this year. Yards per route run, wide receiver efficiency, he ranks 53rd. He ranks 58th at earning targets, so this isn't that solid. But it's hard to ignore the fact that he just saw 8 targets. He's going to go out there and run 30+ routes, and this team is probably going to throw close to 40 times. So at this $7,000 price tag, yeah, he's firmly in play as an underdog, meaning they'll have to throw more, and he's in play as a captain. Now, believe it or not, Russell Wilson is actually a better play than Justin Herbert on this slate for $1,000 less. You see, according to Pro Football Focus, the Denver Broncos have the number 1 matchup advantage when it comes to pass blocking, positive 30% better than the NFL average, means that Wilson's going to have a lot of time to throw and won't be blitzed all that often. And although Wilson is struggling in real life, the indicators for his fantasy success are still there. 34 pass attempts per game is solid, and he's had 7 yards per attempt or more in 4 out of 5 games this year. 7 is just kind of like the NFL average, and he's been over that in 3 out of 4. That means he's been efficient for fantasy passing in most games, and he's getting good volume, which keeps him in play, especially for $1,000 less than Herbert. And because of this, I've taken Russ over 226.5 passing yards. I have him in the 250s for this game. We hit on this on the last Russell Wilson slate getting his over. We're going to take it again, and you get a free bet up to $100, use it or lose it, with the link in the description on prizepicks.com and the code SAL22. So if you want to take advantage of that free bet right now for you can click the link in the description. Now, we can't just ignore Herbert here. The pricing makes it difficult being priced near Eckler and Mike Williams, his teammates, but Herbert is still a solid play. The downsides, well, he's going to be going up against a Denver Broncos pass rush that is top 3 in the NFL, and then a top 2 secondary. But the note on the secondary, like I mentioned, Ronald Darby, one of the best cornerbacks, definitely on this team, the number 2 cornerback on this team, but would be a number 1 on a lot of teams if Surtain wasn't there. He is going to be out, so this is going to be a little bit better for Justin Herbert. And just in general, Herbert's passing volume in this offense keeps him in play on any slate. You see, on the season, he ranks 4th with 200 passes so far, which breaks down to 40 pass attempts per game. If you're getting anything over 35, it is very, very good for a showdown slate. Now, I do like Russ more still, but Herbert is strongly in play, and so is his running back. Now, Austin Eckler is the most expensive player in the slate, and he deserves to be. He ranks number 1 amongst running backs in fantasy points per game. He is absolutely lighting the world on fire in the receiving game, but there are some issues at this price point if we had to poke holes in it. The first one is that he is not seeing any goal line touches. He has 15 red zone touches, but absolutely 0 goal line touches this year. All 5 of his touchdowns are from 10+ yards out. It's actually been Sony Michel and Joshua Kelly seeing all the goal line work. So yes, he's actually getting pulled off the field in the goal line, which is a concern. Sony Michel last week had 1 goal line touch and Joshua Kelly had 2. But the obvious upside is the fact that he's averaging 6.6 targets per game. This has led to an NFL high 31 running back receptions, and he leads all running backs backs in receiving yards. Now, his snaps are down 12% this year, but his efficiency is through the roof. It's likely his efficiency will start to taper off as the season goes on, but it's not all going to come at once, and it's not all going to come in this game. So Eckler is in play. I would still prefer a Mike Williams for cheaper as a captain option. And now this next running back is in a very interesting spot, and that's the veteran at $8,200, Melvin Gordon, because I much prefer Courtland Sutton and his upside on this slate, but Gordon at $8,200 is probably going to go overlooked for a couple of reasons. Now, the last time we saw Gordon, he had over 100 yards on a Thursday Night Football primetime slate. He had 18 touches. This was great to see. However, in this game, he only played 45% of the snaps. He didn't even play 50% of the snaps. He actually played less snaps than teammate Mike Boone, who played 49% of the snaps and averaged 8.5 yards per touch. Mike Boone played more snaps and was actually better on a per touch basis than Gordon. And now there's a good chance Latavius Murray is active for this game, and then 3 running backs involved makes it a little bit of a mess. But we can't just ignore this backfield because it's a showdown slate and it's a great matchup. You see, the Chargers ranked 28th at stopping the run this season, and the Denver Broncos have the number 2 run blocking advantage, Denver right here, at positive 26% this week. Now, all this means that Mike Boone and Melvin Gordon have to remain in play, and Gordon is likely to still see 12 plus touches this week. And because of that, I actually took him over 13 fantasy points. This is banking on the fact that he will see a couple of receptions and or a touchdown, which is what I have him projected for, that combination in this game. So over 13 fantasy points for him. I have him in the upper 14s here. Again, you get a free bet up to $100 on prizepicks.com when you use the code SAL22. It's linked in the description below. You can take this and the Russ one and a couple more that we got for you. As of this recording, we're 63-35 on the season on props. It's been a lovely season so far. All tracked for free in the Discord, so go ahead and take advantage of that free bet offer. Now, this next guy's tough to get to. I don't know how. It's probably just in case something happened to Austin Eckler this week that Joshua Kelly is $6,400. It's kind of like Herbert on that Thursday night slate. These backup running backs are just way too expensive. Now, it is true that Joshua Kelly is now the clear backup. You should pick him up in all fantasy leagues if he's available. This was a split backup position between him and Sony Michel in previous weeks, but then in week 5, Joshua Kelly 27 snaps to just 2 snaps for Sony Michel. Both of Sony Michel's, I believe, were in the goal line. And Joshua Kelly is playing on third downs, and he's seeing goal line usage over Austin Eckler. So it does give him a little bit of touchdown upside, but he's more so just a season-long stash on your bench. You can't play him at $6,400 here. But let's see if we can find a value. There's a lot of pay-up options on this site. Let's see if we can find a value that we can actually play. And for this, I want to look at the Denver tight ends. It's Albert O mainly, and then Eric Sherbert. See, this past week, Sherbert actually played the most snaps, ran the most routes, and it led to 6 targets out there. He's been operating for 2 straight weeks now as the tight end 1. If you don't believe me, you can see for yourself. Sherbert these past 2 weeks has 24 routes run and 20 routes run. Anything above like 20 for a tight end, especially on a showdown slate, is great. This has led to 9 targets over this 2-week span, a red zone target as well, and 6 receptions. And he's putting up decent points. I mean, 3.5 fantasy points isn't great, but for $2,000 on a showdown slate, not bad. And 8.6 has been solid. And 3 out of 4 games now, he has at least 3.5 fantasy points. So Sherbert remains in play. Albert O is going to run like 12 to 15 routes, see 1 or 2 targets at most. I'm not going to get there for the price point. Now, as of this recording, Keenan Allen is questionable at $9,200 this week. He's a fair price point. I still do prefer Courtland Sutton for cheaper though, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to get to Allen, and I prefer Russ, who's a little bit more expensive. Now, this is a hamstring injury, and it's a difficult matchup here. He'll go into the slot against K'Wan Williams, who is one of the better slot cornerbacks, former 49er in the NFL. So you get a player who's questionable, and it's a tough matchup, and he might even be limited in this one. For the price tag, just go to Courtland Sutton. But whether Allen is in or out, the blueprint on Patreon will be updated. And this is just a piece of what is offered in the blueprint. You have ownership projections, point projections, player notes, a lineup optimizer if you want to go up a little bit higher, and even more. This is just for one sport, but we offer a bunch with NBA starting. You can check it all out down below with the thousands of other people using the blueprint to win more right now. So we have Eric Sherbert as a potential value on this slate, and we also have another Denver player who's a value. And that would be $3,000 flat KJ Hamler, who was really exciting to see his usage last week. Should have had the touchdown if Russ looked at him on that final play of the game, and maybe even then he'd be more expensive. We're getting a nice discount. Because Hamler last week goes from playing injured and not really seeing much usage, just 6 routes and 2 routes the previous weeks, to seeing a season high 29 routes on the year, and it only led to 2 targets, but this is going to start to change. It should have been 3 targets with that touchdown, but at $3,000, if you're going to run 29 routes as an exciting, fast, downfield weapon with big upside on a showdown slate, at this price point, yeah, you're in play. But one guy I'm a little weary on is the Chargers tight end, and that would be Gerald Everett, who's $5,600. It's not the greatest price point, and there are some serious concerns here. For starters, on the entire season, he's only running around on 69% of Herbert's dropbacks, which ranks 15th, so basically average. He's just an average tight end, but he's priced pretty high for the showdown slate. And the bigger concern is that the Chargers are now using 3 tight ends. You can look at this from a route standpoint. Before Donald Parham returned, Everett was running 37 routes, 34 routes. It was leading to 10 target games. But now with Parham back, just 21 routes, 23 routes. His snaps have reduced in 3 straight games because Parham is playing more, and it's not leading to much upside. Last week alone, he had just 1 catch on 3 targets. So your takeaway here is that the pricing is not yet up to speed on what his actual new role these last couple of weeks are. He should probably be priced around like $4,800 to $4,600. So I'm a little bit hesitant to play him, and I'm actually taking his under 9.5 fantasy points here. I have him projected for below 8 fantasy points. This is a very solid prop. Go get it with that free bet up to $100 with the link in the description. Now let's discuss some of these other wide receivers. The Chargers wide receivers in Josh Palmer at $5,800, and then DeAndre Carter all the way down here, I don't know how, at $2,600. They're not going to be in play if Keenan Allen returns, but if Keenan Allen is out, DeAndre Carter at $2,600 immediately becomes a screaming value for a player who is going to run 25 plus routes, see 4 or 5 targets in this game. And now the kickers and defenses are definitely in play. You have a solid kicker in Brendan McManus, a lower team total for him though. I'll side with Hopkins if I had to choose a kicker here. And I always get the question, is there anybody viable under $1,000? The short answer to this question is no. The only guy that I think is actually in play for any fantasy points, and it's really just like a projection of one, would be Trey McKitty at $200. McKitty's role, he's basically the third tight end on this team. It's not that enticing, but the solid thing is he's still running 10 routes. He's seen 3 targets the last 2 weeks. He'll have some red zone usage. There's a chance here you get a touchdown out of Trey McKitty, a touchdown or bust player. I still am probably not going to roster. So these are the players you want to key in on. Always lean towards the wide receivers and the captain if you can. And if you want to see exactly the best plays projection / ownership wise, the leverage, which is the main thing in DFS, how to win in DFS, you get leverage. Check out the blueprint link down below. And double check that you're subscribed to this new DFS channel that we have here. Appreciate y'all. Best of luck.